So then, what do you think is the gravest human rights abuse in the DPRK?
When I was sitting on the Commission of Inquiry, we decided unusually to have public hearings. Public hearings are the way English-speaking people conduct inquiries, whether from the United Kingdom or from Australia and New Zealand or from parts of Africa or Asia. That's the way we do inquiries. And I felt when I was sitting in the inquiry and hearing the testimony that it seemed very similar to the black and white newsreels of the time after the Second World War, when there were commissions of inquiry and war crimes trials conducted against the fascist dictators and their officials. And so, although I had been a judge in Australia for 34 years, and in that time I had heard many serious and horrible crimes, I had never heard anything like the testimony that I had to listen to in respect of North Korea. And if you are surprised by that, then you should Google the COI and look yourself, because that is something you can do. In North Korea, they cannot do that. But in the Republic of Korea and in Australia and in the rest of the world, anybody who is interested can look at the witnesses and reach a conclusion on whether they believe the witnesses or whether they think that they are exaggerating or telling lies. I believe anybody who looks at the witnesses will be shocked and will come to the conclusion that action is necessary. The most serious crimes that we heard about were the crimes of detention of so many people. Some people have said that it's probably 1 million people detained in the detention camps in North Korea. We did not think it was 1 million. We thought it was more likely to be about 150,000. But that's still a lot of people. And it's people who are themselves suspected, but also their parents and their children, because they are looked on like a cancer in the society that has to be isolated and kept apart. And the stories of the malnutrition, the lack of food, the lack of engagement with families were terrible. And the treatment of women and the treatment of political prisoners was shocking, especially the treatment of women who were returned by China to North Korea and the way they were treated, particularly if they had become pregnant and had a child, a baby. They were treated and punished because we found that in North Korea there's quite a lot of racism. Racism is not only against Black Lives That Matter. Racism exists in many countries. Racism has existed in my own country, Australia, when we had the White Australia policy and when we treated the Aboriginal people very unfairly. Well, racism exists in North Korea against people, especially women who marry or form relationships with Han Chinese. And that is another basis of punishment of such people. So there are many terrible crimes which are revealed in the reports. They are in our report of the COI, but they're also on the internet with the testimony of the witnesses. They're still there on the internet, and I challenge North Korea to permit the internet testimony to be broadcast in North Korea and to give answers to the testimony of the people, most of them Korean nationals, who have been suffering in the detention camps. Marzuki Darusman used to say, we cannot deal with all of the problems, but we should focus on the detention camps. We should try to reduce the detention of so many people in the detention camps. However, unfortunately, we have not achieved any improvement in that respect. Another matter that certainly is barbarous is the refusal to allow people from South Korea to meet family members in North Korea. This is particularly cruel because such people separated by the Korean War are now becoming quite old. And unless reunion becomes possible in the immediate future, they will lose that opportunity to meet divided families. And instead of permitting dialogue such as we are having now, let it be by Zoom. They don't permit that. What you and I are doing from Korea to Australia and Australia to Korea would be a perfect way to let families meet each other by webinar process, but they don't permit that. They use families in North Korea as political pawns, and that is a shocking abuse of fundamental human rights, and that should be changed, and quickly.